It's time to take a ride on the Steelers Afternoon Drive with our co-hosts, Alan Saunders and Zachary Smith.
Welcome into another episode of Steelers Afternoon Drive. I'm Zachary Smith. That is Alan Saunders on an afternoon drive. Alan, what's going on?
I am, as we speak, departing campus, St. Vincent College, barring unforeseen circumstances for the last time this year.
I was just saying, was that because it seems like it was a longer day for you there today? Was that because it was the last day there, or just a lot of things to write? What is the case that you were just now driving home?
No, this is a shorter day than a lot of these have been. I've been here on campus for a good number of these. One or two.
That's true. You normally are all the way back home on these episodes, so I guess that's a good point. We still catching you in your drive as opposed to you being already back home. Yeah, never mind.
Yeah, I've kind of done it a couple different ways, but I think this is a pretty average day here at training camp.
Sometimes, in the room at St. Vincent College, sometimes back in the house with the credentials in the background. But yeah, we're getting an actual afternoon drive from Alan today. Alan, we can just kind of dive right into it, I guess. I wanted to take the time on today's episode, being that today was the last training camp practice, to kind of go through some takeaways, wrapping up, if you will, training camp position by position. And then the question that we have even kind of ties in perfectly with that. So I guess we'll just start with bigger picture. What were your overall takeaways from this training camp?
Yeah, let's start with the most important position. I wrote today in my training camp takeaways, I think we came into this with Russell Wilson in pole position. I don't think anybody really understood what that meant, or at least weren't 100% clear on what that meant. And then he got hurt pushing a blocking sled and didn't practice for a week, and then didn't really practice for another week. And I think people started to wonder what was going on with the Steelers quarterback position. I feel like at this point you can kind of stop wondering. Russell Wilson took all the reps with the first team in practice today. He looked great. Pole position meant that he was going to have to lose the job. And I tell you what, he has not lost it. And especially when you consider, here's the thing. If you ask a fan who should be the starting quarterback, I think you might get some differing opinions. Some people have seen Justin Fields, and even if you had a fan who was at practice every day, watched every single rep, just like I have, just like Mike Tomlin has, you might get some differing opinions. But Mike Tomlin is going to decide the best quarterback by who makes the fewest mistakes, who is the cleanest player. And there is no question that has been Russell Wilson. There's just none. He's the guy. He hasn't even appeared in the preseason game yet. I expect that we will see him at least a little bit this Saturday against Buffalo. Mike Tomlin said he is available to practice. Sounds like he's going to practice tomorrow in the joint practice. There's still T's to be crossed and I's to be dotted, but I leave training camp feeling like Russell Wilson is the Steelers starting quarterback.
Okay, and that's how you entered camp as well. So I would say, or no, did you think it was more of a competition before than it really turned out to be?
I thought it was going to be an open competition. I do think it was an open competition, but I think the competition was viewed within the lens. How did these guys look than what they've been? Because what they've been is Wilson being better. And so as long as Wilson looked largely the same, Justin Fields is going to have to look a lot better to make it it can be a competition and not close. You know what I mean? Those two things. Mike Tomlin can run a fair competition and also say that Russell Wilson started pretty far ahead and he's finishing pretty far ahead. And it doesn't really seem like at any point in between things were really that in danger of him losing this job.
Well, so I was going to bring up the injury, though, in the way that could have impacted it. Do you feel like it didn't then? Or because I know some people feel like maybe it was even to the benefit where he wasn't able to show, and Justin was able to get those reps and maybe try to take the job as opposed to the other way around.
I'm not a big hat guy in general. You don't see me wearing hats on the show a lot. I'm going to put my tinfoil hat on for a second, though. I think about 99.9% of that injury was manufactured by Mike Tomlin to create more competition. I think if there was a game 15 minutes after Russell Wilson was pushing that sled, he'd have started in it if the Steelers were playing in it. He was not.
And I mean, you've maintained that the entire
There
time.
are 40 guys on this roster right now that are hurt more than Russell Wilson ever was. Maybe 50. He was not hurt. The entire thing was about creating more, making it more of a competition, giving Justin Fields a real chance to do it. And, I think Justin Fields has been fine compared to my expectations for Justin Fields, but he hasn't been better, and that's what you have to be to win a competition.
Yeah, I mean, and you've maintained that the entire time, so it's not like you just randomly decided that was your opinion of the situation. Another thing that I've seen people say, though, regarding the Fields thing, it kind of going along the same lines with you in terms of Russell Wilson being able to participate, but them just holding him out for that reason, getting more reps. Wasn't necessarily about this year, but what about just getting a longer look at Justin in general for the future?
Yeah, I think the Steelers have a real investment in Justin Fields that you may not necessarily see in a player that's traded for a 6th-round pick in the final year of his deal. Usually that's like a guy that the Steelers traded for Jesse Davis right before the season for like a conditional 6th a couple of years ago. They treated Jesse Davis pretty darn differently than they're treating Justin Fields. Like, they obviously think that they may have something in Justin Fields and want him to develop and grow for the future. That is a very different thing than him being the starting quarterback week 1 in Atlanta this year. I think it's pretty clear that Russell Wilson is going to be that. But I do think the Steelers care about Justin Fields, want Justin Fields to grow, and think that they have a potential future starting quarterback. Look, even if Russell Wilson is good this year, even if he's every bit as good as he was for Denver last year, the number of years he's going to be able to do that are very, very finite. I mean, he's already sort of like in a sort of no one has ever been here before territory in terms of aging quarterbacks of his size. And so, betting on Russell Wilson for more than 2024 does not seem like a good bet. I think the Steelers would much prefer if Justin Fields can establish himself as a legitimate option going forward at some point.
Yeah, Joe Rutter still hasn't gotten over the Jesse Davis loss, but that's a different story for a different day. What do you make of the running back situation? Obviously, it's boring at the top. Najee Harris, Jalen Warren, we know how big of factors those two are going to be for this offense. Cordero Patterson's just kind of getting into the mix, but is there anybody else that maybe you thought pushed for a roster spot? Or is it just going to be, a practice squad back that they pick from, Ward or Champlin or one of those guys?
Yeah, I think they're all on the practice squad. I think Jonathan Ward has probably been the best and most consistent of that group, and he suffered a hamstring injury today, which is really tough timing. I would guess we'll probably keep him out of the Buffalo game. And, for running backs, especially, those game reps mean so much more than the training camp reps do. So that's a tough break. I think LaMichael Piron's been pretty good, if you need a second choice, but we'll see if Ward's able to get healthy and get back in there for that Lions game and maybe show something. But I think no matter what, all those guys are on the practice squad. And I think Jack Coletto's going to start the season on the practice squad too. I wrote down the starting kickoff return group today, and he wasn't on it. I think that's a bad sign for him. When I asked Arthur Smith about the fullback, he was like, those guys at the end of the roster are going to play for Danny Smith first, and then if they're getting a helmet, then I can use him. If you're not on the starting kickoff return and you're a fullback trainer, you're probably not making the team. So I think Coletto probably goes on the practice squad, but I do think he's a guy that they could, on a matchup-based scenario, bring up throughout the season, and say, okay, we're going to bring you up. We like you for this matchup, for this game, and then maybe we don't. And I think that's something they can take advantage of from the practice squad. I think he's probably on the outside looking in as well.
To be honest, even as if he makes the practice squad and is an occasional game day call up, I consider that a win for him for expectations from when we were coming to the training camp big time. So, I mean, tip of the cap there for the work that he's been able to put in. All right, let's move to the wide receiver position. Then this has been one that's obviously been hotly talked about because of guys on the roster and not on the roster. Outside of George Pickens, we've talked about Van Jefferson having his moments, Calvin Austin having his moments. Roman Wilson got hurt the first day of pads. We've talked about guys on the bubble. Where do we stand with this position group?
Where we stand is breaking down the color of Brandon Ayuk's T-shirt at 49ers practice today. That's where we stand.
Yeah.
Part of this ridiculousness is that the Steelers wide receivers just clearly have not been and are not good enough or deep enough. I think Van Jefferson has cemented himself as a guy who's going to be on this roster and going to be in the regular rotation for catches no matter what happens. I think Calvin Austin has cemented himself as obviously the team's starting punt returner, but in addition to that, a guy who's going to be a part of the offense. Beyond that, I mean, Roman Wilson's going to make the team because he was a third-round pick, but he wasn't playing that good before he got hurt, and then he was hurt, and who knows when he's coming back and what he's going to look like when he does. I mean, the kind of best-case scenario for him is you hope he's able to kind of put things together by the midpoint of the season and maybe be like almost like a trade deadline acquisition where you can kind of get him into the, work him in slowly and make him be some fresh legs for that brutal stretch run the Steelers have. Beyond that, I think Scotty Miller's been better than I expected, but I can't say I expected a lot. Quez Watkins, probably a little worse than I expected, and I can't say I expected a lot. There's plenty of room for additions to this wide receiver room.
That's where I was going to go next. So I still very much believe that there is a wide receiver that will be on this roster that currently isn't, despite his name potentially not being Brandon Ayuk. I mean, whether you want to look at Houston's roster right now, like I think they got 9 or 10 guys that are NFL capable receivers over there. I threw the Packers out there as an option too. I think they got like 7 or 8 guys that are NFL caliber. So I think there's, like you, a guy right now that's not on this team that will be on this team at the wide receiver position.
Yeah, I agree, and I don't want to have a whole episode about Ayuk, but nothing changed, guys. They're still exactly where they were. Yeah, there may be one more hurdle. There's been one more hurdle since April. Like they've never been that far apart. Who knows if they'll get together? As I've said many times, nothing is over until somebody else is holding a press conference.
Yep, I agree. I know a lot of people were in panic. He was at their practice today or whatever, and was wearing a red cutoff, which only one person said he was wearing it was 49er specific. I don't know if that's true or not, but either way, like you said, if you're still holding out hope, continue to hold out hope. If not, if you've moved on, I get it at this point. Tight ends behind Pat Freiermuth, Darnell Washington, obviously, Michael Pruitt, Connor Hayward, Hot Rod. It's a deep group. What do we make of that position group as we head towards the second preseason game?
I thought Darnell had his best day as a receiver today. He got loose downfield a couple times. Pretty much mossed somebody. I can't remember who it was. Had a couple really nice catches. Got him, deep, like 20, 25, 30 yards downfield. I think that's a part of his game that we haven't seen yet. I'm not sure how big of a part of his game it's ever going to be, but just making him a threat to be a receiver that they have to pay attention to, I think, is the biggest part. If he's out there, as a tight end that the other teams are treating as a tight end, then that's a win because they're going to put a linebacker out there to cover him, and he can block any linebacker in the NFL into the ground without breaking a sweat. And also, what the Steelers need to avoid is they can't have other teams treating Darnell like he's a sixth offensive lineman. Like if Darnell's in the game and they're putting a defensive end over him, that's not providing any benefit to the offense, right? That's just we put a big guy in, you put a big guy in. Now we're exactly where we were before with one fewer player on either side. Like it's even. They have to get off defenses to treat him like a receiving threat. And I think him showing the occasional ability to stretch the field, even if he doesn't a lot, will go a long way in regards to that. Thought he was pretty good today. I think Michael Pruitt is really solid, probably better than I thought he'd be. I feel like he makes this team, especially with Coletto probably out. And Connor Hayward's been nice a couple of last days too. Talked about him not being a perfect fit for this offense in terms of his blocking ability, but I think he's done enough to hang around as well. He's a guy that probably sneakily in danger in terms of roster spots that are really people aren't talking about. Just because I do think Rodney Williams, man, is a heck of a special teamer, and I think they're going to want to try to find a way to get him on this 53-man roster. But right now, I'm not quite sure how that works.
Ooh, yeah. I mean, could you imagine that? I know that Connor probably shouldn't classify him as just a tight end, but could you imagine keeping 5 tight end capable guys, 5 guys that do that job? I don't know. That seems kind of outlandish. I don't want to say outlandish. I mean, they are probably, if you were putting together just the 53 best guys, not trying to just by position, would they all 5 be on it?
I'll say this: all 5 tight ends are better than all but the top 4 wide receivers.
Yeah.
Like, why
Yeah.
would you keep another wide receiver at the expense of one of those guys? I don't know. I'd rather
Yeah.
have.
Oh,
Rodgers
what if
than
you can just
That's the other
consider
thing
Pat?
too, is that the guys who are like wide receiver 5-6, like Scotty Miller hasn't been doing a lot of special teams. Quez Watkins obviously not doing a lot of special teams. Destin Patrick was out there as a punt gunner, didn't go that well. Like Hot Rod and Connor Hayward can play some special teams. Like Pruitt can probably play some special teams. Like I think if the tiebreaker in those decisions at special teams, I think the tight ends have an advantage.
Yeah, I mean, hey, if you just want to consider for numbers purposes, Pat a receiver, and then it's
There
more
you
like
go. Yeah.
3.5 tight ends.
Yeah.
Offensive line, and this is where I'll tie our
I
question
think
in.
Pat
What
would prefer
go
for his contract extension purposes that they considered him a wide receiver too. Pat could go,
Yes.
I'm a wide receiver. I need $30 million a year.
Absolutely. The offensive line, and this is where we'll tie our question in from YouTube as well. But before we get to that, what have been your overall thoughts on that group?
I think Zach Frazier's charging hard, man. Talked early in camp about there being highs and lows. I think he's cleaning up the lows, still seeing some of the highs. I think him and Herbig are pretty much neck and neck right now. Herbig left practice today very late. Didn't get an update from Mike Tomlin. Looked like some kind of upper body injury because he walked up the hill. So, like, you're not going to do that if it's any kind of lower body injury, but I don't know anything more than that. Assuming Herbig's okay, I think we'll see a pretty good battle between those two guys over these last two preseason games because I think they're pretty close right now. With Troy out, I think you're going to see Dan at left tackle and Broderick at right tackle, and I think that's probably going to continue until Troy's healthy. We had a whole episode about that. Spencer Anderson, man, he's been consistently ahead of Mason McCormick. Like Isaac Seumalo got the day off today. It was Spencer Anderson took all the first-team reps. He's playing really well, man. They have a very, very difficult cut on that offensive line. I have no idea how they're figuring that out. Or maybe they find a way to keep 10. Like, I don't see it. It's not obvious to me, but their 10th offensive lineman is 100% an NFL player.
Yeah, absolutely. It's kind of like, I don't know, not one for one, but the Houston wide receiving group along the Steelers offensive line.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. Maybe they'll trade the Texans a wide receiver, an offensive lineman for a wide receiver. Just people helping people,
Yeah, I was looking for this question here when you may have mentioned it, but we don't know the exact details of Herbig's injury yet. Would you leave the door open to potentially have Zach Frazier even start that second preseason game though? Like injury aside.
Yes.
Okay.
At the very least, he will work with the one Saturday, no matter what.
Much.
Whether he takes the first rep or not, I think you will see Zach Frazier working with the ones.
Okay. Hayden has a question about the offensive line here, and that's why I wanted to wait to tie this in. But he says, the question was about everything as a whole. Which Steelers position group do you think is the most overhyped and underhyped heading into the season? Hayden kind of gives his thoughts here, saying, I'm really excited about the future of the offensive line, but having 2 to 3 young guys starting could be pretty rough for the first part of the season. I think they're being a little bit overvalued right now by the fan base.
Yeah, I think I agree with that in general. You should expect some growing pains from young offensive linemen. Especially, I'll be honest, center and tackle are way more difficult. You can hide a rookie guard pretty nicely. It's hard to hide a tackle, and at center you have CQ exchange issues. You have bull rush problems. Kendrick Green obviously struggled as a whole, but as a rookie, especially early on, there were plenty of problems. I think there are probably going to be some issues. I keep saying this game in Atlanta is sneakily very difficult. They have a very strong front. It's going to be a real tough first test for this young offensive line. But I feel okay about them. Here's the thing: I don't think they're going to be great right away, but I think they're going to be pretty good and have reason to be hopeful for more in the future. And that's a good place to be.
Yeah.
Even with Dan Moore in there, I think it's been way overstated how bad Dan Moore has been. I think he's fine. He's not great, but I think he's fine. And I think it will be honestly okay to start the season with one fewer young guy in the mix. Starting one rookie on the offensive line, if that's what ends up happening, is probably more than enough anyway.
Alan, I don't want to say it. Don't get me wrong. I am not a Dan Moore guy, and I completely understand the Steelers' decision to try to replace him now in back-to-back drafts in the first round. But I think we all know why a majority of the fan base feels the way they do about Dan Moore. It's a certain company. I don't want to bring him up and get you on the soapbox again, but I feel like that is what people will always point to.
Yeah. And the worst part about it is that he only got that grade because he goes up against their golden boy, who they have to dramatically overrate to prop up their own BS opinions.
Yeah, that's true. That is very true. I cannot argue that.
I wonder if we looked at the rest of the left tackles in the AFC North. I bet they're all similarly underrated by PFF, just because they got to, they got to pump up their boy for engagement. By the way, if you've not read the fantastic breakdown of what a piece of crap company PFF is by Arif Hassan of Wide Left, it's a subscription article. It's well worth the price of admission. To go read it.
I agree. Also, that company's been losing some of their top dogs, so we'll see. How that continues to happen there. But stock down. Let's flip gears now. Go to the defensive side. Stick in the trenches though. We're just gonna work our way back. What about the state of the defensive line? Oh, also tie in some injury news here. They get Keanu Benton back today.
Yeah, talked to Keanu after practice very briefly. Said his eye's fine. He's good to go. No problems, no worries, no concerns, nothing at all. Had a full practice today and looked pretty darn good. In fact, he started in the nickel alignment, which I know is something that we've been wanting to see. Now, Cam Hayward got a vet day, so of course that's why. Yeah. But I do think that obviously KB's he's the guy to do that. But I think good for him to get in there and work with the first team in that alignment. I think he's going to be big in that role this year. And then, the rest of the defensive line, I think Larry Ogunjobi's had a very solid camp. I would say unspectacular, but solid. And I really think DeMarvin Leal has been one of the biggest stories on the team and his improved play. This is a guy that I thought when they drafted Logan Lee, man, it was like, ooh, that's a shot. That's a hey buddy, you better be paying attention because we're not satisfied. And I remember talking to Marv at the end of last season, like, hey, you were a third round pick, like you're a healthy scratch. And what do you feel like they have a plan for you? Like, do you have an idea what's going on? He was like, I don't know. I guess we're gonna see. He's a guy that looks like he has a plan right now. Like he's missed the last two practices with something minor, but I'm not concerned about it. And I think he's had a great training camp. I think that's another place where, honestly, that was a place where I was considering a battle. I'm not even sure it's a battle anymore. I got 92, 98, 94 on the team and nobody else. I think they've all been really good. Lowry, since he's come back from injury, has looked very solid. He had a TFL today, pass breakup yesterday. I mean, he's making an impact right away. And Loudermilk has been very, very stout, man. He's not flashy at all, but he's exactly what the Steelers are looking for in offensive linemen. I think you're probably going to see them try to get Logan Lee to the practice squad.
I was starting to think about this too. Maybe, and I know that we've probably spent more time thinking about the depth of defensive line, or at least I have, in terms of the skill sets that they have down there and what they've lost and trying to replace them. But I wonder too, like with DeMarvin losing that weight, he would probably, to me, be the reserve pass rush guy out of that group that you're losing in Armin Watts, probably replicated by him. Because like when I think about Dean Lowry, definitely more the run stuffer type, and maybe Loudermilk a little bit more, but I run stuffer too. Like those are the skill sets that I think they bring to the table. As opposed to DeMarvin Leal. So maybe they do have the blend there that I was looking for, and I just didn't see it at first.
Well, I don't know that we should have expected this from Leal, but he's certainly been the guy to provide that pass rush juice. He's got a ton of sacks in training camp. I'd have to go back and add them all up from all the notes, but he's got a bunch. He's been really, really good. And, yeah, if he's the pass rush depth and Lowry and Loudermilk are the run-stopping depth and Mon Adams – I think it's a pretty well-rounded defensive line. It doesn't necessarily have a ton of star power at the top, but I think it's pretty well-rounded in terms of depth.
Yeah, and I guess you could kind of group the outside linebackers. I'm sorry, in with those guys too, especially because of the way that the Steelers, line up their defense. So Alex Highsmith also tying in the injury stuff, coming back to practice today. You got T.J. Watt on the opposite side, Nick Herbig behind them going into year 2, and then it's kind of like an open competition for that 4th spot after Marcus Golden's sudden retirement. So what do you make of that group?
Yeah, I mean, TJ with a vet day today. Alex just did indies on his first day back from that groin injury. He said he wants to play in a preseason game, but he feels really good right now. Not sure if it'll be this Saturday, but he's going to get one of these next 2 at least. But with TJ Vette and Highsmith just doing indies, it was Herbig and Moon, and man, I thought they were really good. I think Jeremiah Moon has definitely stepped ahead in that outside linebacker 4 battle. It's funny, man, what a week. Like, he got hurt. They signed Marcus Golden, and it looked like, oh, man, there goes Moon's chance. And then he gets healthy. Golden retires now. He's been great the last week. So, yeah, a big swing for Moon, and I think he's making this team now. Like, I don't see who takes it from him.
Okay, I've seen like Kyron Johnson getting some. If somebody had to, would you say it's him right behind Moon, or?
Yeah, I think Kyron Johnson's probably a guy you can try to get to the practice squad. I mean, he's got great speed. Didn't do great, and they have a one-on-one tackling drill today, and I think he was awesome at that. He has a good pass rush. Just not sure, like, the well-roundedness of his game is where they'd probably want it to be. And Moon's a bigger guy, I think, for kickoffs. Like, they're going to value the size a little bit more.
Yeah, I was starting to think
the fit with Herbig too, because Herbig is already a pretty small guy, and you don't want like small and smaller to be your 2 backup outside linebackers. Like, you want to have some size somewhere. I think Moon is just a better fit with Herbig.
Yeah. That's what I was going to say. Herbig's going to be tested. People are going to run right at him at times and test his ability to stop the run. Are both your reserve edge rushers going to be guys of that same ilk? I don't know. But yeah, that's a good point. Inside linebackers. This is another spot that's hotly contested. Still haven't seen, have you even seen Cole Holcomb yet?
No, not physically laid eyes on Cole Holcomb. Okay. No Patrick Queen, no Landon Roberts today. Both got vet days. The starting linebackers were Peyton Wilson and, drum roll please, do we know who this is? Mark Robinson. Mark Robinson, ahead of Tyler Matakevich in the starting lineup as the second-team linebacker. I don't know what to make of Mark Robinson. I'm not sure whether he's making this team or not. I put him on it in my last 53-man roster projection. I can't say I felt great about it. He's had a pretty up-and-down camp. There's been some plays. There's been some bad plays. That's sort of the story of his career. He's never really put it all together. He is, seemingly a core special teamer, but is that role taken by Matakevich, or do they need another one? I don't know. I'll tell you what, man. If you're talking about a deep sleeper, hard charger from this training camp roster, like a guy we had zero expectations for that's really shown it, Jacoby Windman is a football player. Like that guy has had the best camp of all the people you've never heard of before.
Okay.
He can play.
I was thinking a little bit about the Robinson Matakevich thing, because it's like, if I had to have one play like defensive snaps, it's Robinson. But for special teams,
Robinson. Yeah, but I don't know. Yeah.
But for special teams, that's Matakevich's calling card. That's why he was brought back. So, like,
and I don't know. They know who Mark Rob is and who Dirty Red is, and they decided that they felt like they needed to sign Matakevich. To me, that's a pretty strong sign that they want to keep him over Robinson. It's not like either of those guys are any different than when they signed Matakevich. So I don't know, but maybe they'll keep 5 too. Like that's like, that's also possible.
Yeah, and I mean, maybe a moot point, at least at the beginning of the year, with the health of Cole Holcomb. So, they might be able to keep all those guys around.
They could keep 5 inside linebackers, and then when Holcomb comes back, then make a decision about which one they don't want to keep.
Sure, absolutely.
And I think from what happened last year, I do think the Steelers, Mike Tomlin says they don't operate in their fears, and maybe I believe that, maybe I don't, but they certainly are well aware of their wounds. And linebacker depth was a wound last year that I think they are not in a hurry to repeat. So it would not shock me if they went out of their way to have extra linebacker depth this year.
Yeah, I mean, that makes complete sense to me, obviously, watching it go down. And you could say the same thing, the positions we're about to get to now, corners. Joey Porter Jr. We've seen Dante Jackson get some off days down the stretch here as well. Corey Trice really coming on strong. Darius Rush part of that group as well. You know, you go on and on. Beanie Bishop, obviously Cam Sutton going to start with a suspension here. What do you make of that group?
Yeah, man, Corey Trice has been really good this last week. I think he's kind of locked up that cornerback 3 job, and also probably some reps as the dime. Beanie, you know, a little more up and down. I thought wasn't that great in the preseason opener. Seemed like they came out this week deciding they wanted to give Grayland Arnold a look and see what he could do. And then he gets hurt today. Calf injury, didn't look good. I would imagine that he's not going to start the season healthy at this point. So you're looking at back to Beanie, or I don't know, maybe looking elsewhere. I don't know. I don't know if it was more about them being disappointed with Beanie or just wanting to get a good look at Grayland to see if he's in this sort of conversation as the 10th defensive back. And then, you know, I think Darius Rush is a good special teamer. I don't think he's been great in coverage. Honestly, been a little disappointed with his training camp in terms of his play at cornerback, especially on the outside. I think he's looked better as a dime. And then he's played, but he just plays a lot of special teams. I think he's a bigger physical guy. He's a good tackler. I think they find a way to keep him around. And then Anthony Averett hasn't been bad. I'm just not sure he's done anything that makes me think that they feel like they need to keep him. Yeah, and then beyond that, Thomas Graham, he's a guy I'm rooting for. I'd put him on the practice squad. I think he brings a lot to the table. I'm honestly a little surprised he hasn't gotten a bigger shot at that slot cornerback job because I think he's a player. We'll see how that progresses. Don't forget that name.
Okay, and then finally on the safeties with my boy Ryan Watts making the last play of training camp and the way that he's come on. But what about the rest of the group and just your overall thoughts?
Well, how does he get to be your boy? Where I don't remember you like calling dibs or something like this. This is not what.
I'll have to go retweet my original tweet when we drafted Ryan Watts. I was super excited about it for a 6th round pick. I said that's my guy. I just have an affinity. Like I just love defensive backs in general. It's my favorite position to watch. I love the pick of Ryan Watts. So he's been.
I'll tell you what,
my guy.
I did not love the pick of Ryan Watts when it happened because I watched his tape and I was like, this isn't good. And then they moved him to safety, as I suggested that they might try to, when I saw that the tape of corner wasn't very good and that he's pretty huge for a corner. Man, is he a safety. He's been really good. I think they got a player there. I think he'll make the team. I did not have him on the team before camp. I do now. He's been solid. And you know who the other people are. You know, no mysteries really between Elliott, Fitzpatrick, Casey, Killebrew. Those guys are flocks.
Do you think, though, Deshaun Elliott, I mean, we knew that he was a good player when he came here, but I feel like he got a ton of buzz for how good he has looked through this training camp. Did that surprise you at all, or did you think it was as advertised?
No, he's a way better player than I remembered him being. Obviously, I covered games where he played for Baltimore. I remember him being on the field. I don't remember him being anywhere near as impactful as he was for the Steelers' training camp. I think this big nickel, heavy slot role, whatever you want to call it, really, really is perfect for him. It's basically like they built this position for this man. I think he's going to be. I'll tell you what, man. There was one more Elliott on Freiermuth today. I'm like, I bet 88 is awfully ready to be done with seeing 25 because that has been a 2 Rams butting horns matchup all training camp, and that's a couple of pretty good players.
You know what's funny too? Just kind of going back to, we've talked so much about the Houston Texans receiver, and you just brought up Pat, so I feel like I have to say this. I'm not really revealing anything that's like confidential here, but we were texting shortly before this, and he said that even on the sidelines during that first preseason game, those guys were talking about how many NFL receivers were on the Texans.
Yeah,
and it surprised them. So we'll see if something comes to fruition there. But Alan, great stuff as always. Tell the people where they can find you.
At @Saunders_PGH, PGH Steelers Now, SteelersNow.com. You can no longer find me at St. Vincent College. Tomorrow you can find me at Acrisure Stadium, Steelers Bills, joint practice, 1 p.m. You'll have Steelers Morning Rush, practice report, afternoon drive. Afternoon drive may be delayed somewhat significantly tomorrow. We'll see till the time it goes. And then we get an off day, and we like those.
Boom. There we go.
DB on Friday.
There we go. I found the tweet, by the way. It wasn't quite as strong of a statement as I felt like it was originally. I said Ryan Watts is going to own, in all caps, own on special teams. Beyond that, we will have to see, but that's my guy. So, I guess I was a little bit more up in the air than I thought in terms of what his role on the defense was going to be, but own, in all caps, on special teams.
Yeah, I'll give you that.
There we go. Like, subscribe, hit that notification bell if you are here on YouTube. Hit us in the comments with your thoughts on anything that we talked about today, or also just a question for a future episode. If you were listening somewhere else, Apple, Spotify, wherever you get your podcast from, be sure to leave us a 5-star review over there. Subscribe over there. Hit us up on TikTok, Steelers Afternoon Drive. Search it, post 90-second clips of the show over there. You can find me everywhere, Zachary Smith, PGH. For Alan Saunders and myself, thanks for jumping in. Take another ride on the Steelers Afternoon Drive.